Hello, friends. In this video, I want to go a little bit in detail about things that managers might benefit of um, to know in order to interact in a more organic way with analysts. Also, to be a little bit in their shoes so they can understand better the language and they can also make a better use of the information that is being provided by the analysts and not being lost. So one of the main things or three things that everyone should know that is going to work with data and statistical results is a little bit about regression analysis. What does it mean? You know, how do you measure that? What are the main variables or quantities? There are three main pillars of statistics: regression analysis, statistical inference, and experimental design that are important to understand the results that are being communicated that come from the analysts. These things, you don't really need to go really deep. I mean, the deeper you go, the better it is, obviously. But you need to have the basic knowledge about regression analysis, statistical inference, how you design an experiment, how you evaluate the results of an experiment. This is important to remove bias from the results that you're getting, to have a deeper understanding what data you have to provide, how do you structure your hypothesis, and how the true hypothesis is going to be selected. That kind of thing is important to have strong communication. Also, it is very helpful to think in terms of a framework or a process on how do you make decisions based on data. Now, there are many different frameworks out there that might help you to be more efficient doing this. I'm gonna give you just some points. This is just some guideline. This is not a process or anything. But these are points that are important to keep in mind in order to be more effective in the decision-making process. So first of all, you need to recognize what the problem is. That's seems to be clear, but it's not always easy to ask the right question. Okay, so let us get started. The first point is to recognize what the problem is. And this translates also into asking the right questions. What is happening? What are the hypotheses that you're trying to confirm with this analysis? And then what actions are you going to take afterwards? Then it makes sense to also to review previous results, what people have done in a similar situation. This might help you to follow these ideas, to actually not begin in the vacuum, but to begin with something, and you can adapt that better to the current system environment. You can also see if those measures that were taken by other people in the past were effective or not. The next step is to think about how would you model the solution. This is a little bit more technical because it's necessary in order to pick what are the right variables to build your model. Now, how do you translate that into business language? Well, you need to define what are the KPIs that are important for you. You need to decide what are the key performance indicators or variables that you're going to use to decide how to model the problem that you have, how to reframe those questions that you have, how do you reframe the system, the business environment in terms of these KPIs that you're interested in. Then you need to begin with the data collection process. And again, this is also a technical aspect of it. There might be different data sources that you might benefit from. And also there are aspects involved as for instance, how do you get that data? How do you cleanse that data? How to use that data in practice to actually get information, get value out of it. And once that data is cleansed and can be used, then comes the technical step, which is to analyze the data, is to look at it. And there are many different steps. It goes from reporting or simply looking at the data to do diagnosis, to make predictions. So there are different steps in terms of analyzing the data. And finally, present and act on the results, which is this aspect that I was mentioning in the previous video about translating the results of the analysis into something that the stakeholders or the people who's going to actually act on those results can use. One another way of reframing a little bit this process is something called OODA loops. And again, these processes, they are not linear. They are more like, you can think about them more like loops, because once that you act, you gather data again, and then you try to see if what your hypothesis or your assumptions were correct, and if the actions that you were taking actually had the effect that you expected. So there is this alternative model called the Udaloop, which stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, and Act, which essentially encapsulates the same ideas as observed. You look at the environment, you analyze what the current conditions are, you orient yourself according to the situation that you have right now, then you decide what to do next, you act, and then you observe again what is the result. And so you go into this OODA loop, which essentially is another way to reframe that process that we mentioned before, which is, recognize the problem, review previous findings, model solution, and select variables, collect data, analyze that data, and present and act on those results.